Hello and welcome back to Ticker Symbol Live, where we take a look at ARK Invest's 5-year vision of the future and try to map that to the stocks that they are buying today, or more specifically yesterday, as we look at their trading days and compare those to the days before last. So what I've done is I've sorted the ARK reactor here by the ARK rank, as always, so we can see that their top position is Tesla, as usual, and we can go down and down the list and see where the biggest changes in their positions have happened over the most recent trading days. So, Zoom video, we've talked about that in a recent episode. 10x Genomics, we've talked about that in a recent episode, and then we see in the middle of them Docusign. Docusign is ARK Invest's 17th largest position overall. It sits in ARKK, ARKW, and ARKF, and their combined position in it is just under $700 million. It's safe to say that ARK Invest is very convicted in Docusign and is very bullish on it long term. So the question is, what's going on with this thing? Is it just is it like the ultimate pandemic stock? It's one of those things. Is it just an ESignature stock? It seems like a pretty boring stock, and I'm putting that in very big air quotes, compared to a lot of other positions that we talk about on this channel. The Teslas, the Squares, the Nano Dimensions that do something very technologically interesting and very visual and very impactful. When you look at those companies, you get really excited. And then you think about Docusign and you're like, yeah, I'm going to go make a sandwich or do something else because that's the least interesting thing in the world. Signing papers digitally instead of physically. What's the big deal? But it turns out that Docusign is a very big deal. And that's what I'd like to show you now, why it's such a big deal. So let me stop sharing the ARK reactor one more time. Before we switch from the ARK reactor, just show you what else is going on under the hood here. Lots of interesting trades. Palantir was almost today's topic. I know everyone is very excited about Palantir, another one of those very stimulating stocks. Big increase in their cash position, and if we go down the list, we can see some interesting sells as well. Trimble, number one in ARKX, which is why it's constantly being bought, and then a couple interesting sells like in Teradyne. DraftKings, so on and so forth. We will get to all of these stocks on the list eventually. But for now, we're going in order of ARK Invest's total amount of holdings, and the biggest buy has been in Docusign. Again, a almost $700 million position. Now let's talk about it. Share my screen here. Talk about transforming the foundation of business, right? So first of all, let's take a step back and look at the stock. The stock has been really interesting. If we go to the 5-year view, we can see that since the March 2020 lows, this stock has had an incredible run. It's jumped over 200%, and now it's leveled off, right? So what we can see here is basically since July, it's traded roughly sideways. It's down 2% since July, right? And it's had this nice big peak. Let me zoom in here. We can look at the 1-year view and we can see this big higher highs and higher lows, and then down back to where we are today as people continue to rotate out of growth stocks and into value stocks. It's currently down about 22% from its recent all-time highs, which means if you buy it today and it touches a new all-time high, it will be up over 25% from doing so. What the heck is this thing? What is Docusign? I think we've all tried it before. Actually, let me ask the question of the day now that I'm thinking about it. What do you think about Docusign? Have you used Docusign for an entire agreement process before? Has anyone here not used Docusign? When I think of Docusign, to me, it's almost a verb. It's like you go Google something, you go Docusign it, right? It's definitely one of those very powerful brands in terms of brand recognition. Whenever you're using a brand name as a verb, realize that that has a lot of brand equity, and that's very, very hard to replace. Who are Docusign's competitors? You can probably name them if you Google them or if you think about them, but you talk about docu-signing documents. And to me, as an investor, that's something important that I always look for. Okay, enough hemming and hawing. Let's get into the investor relations deck. DocuSign transforms the foundation of the way we do business, right? All business is underpinned by agreements, and all agreements are underpinned by signatures. So, DocuSign at a glance, number one, ESignature Solution. I believe this to be true. No brainer. Again, we use DocuSign as a verb. Has an almost million customer base, and that's probably including big firms as single customers as well. $50 billion total addressable market, and strong growth performance year over year and quarter over quarter. This is the chart that I really love. I love that they put this up front. I know it's a little hard to see the text, but here's what's going on. Business everywhere cares about signing documents. Absolute no-brainer. Sales, marketing, services, human resources, and finance. IT and operations, legal, facilities, product management, and procurement. Agreements between businesses, agreements between people, and agreements between businesses and people, right? There's almost nothing you do in life that involves a financial transaction of, a large financial transaction that doesn't come with some contract or agreement. So the way DocuSign started was by being that online signature solution well before the pandemic, obviously in a time of contactless business, DocuSigning is increasingly important. And as people work from home, and now as the workforce is becoming digitized and globalized, being able to sign stuff online is becoming increasingly important for more and more reasons. Yep, I'm already seeing some good comments in the chat. Use it almost daily for a few years now. Me too. As I stand up different businesses, as I get involved in different things with this channel or outside this channel, I have DocuSigned more things this quarter than probably in the rest of my life combined. And that's only ramping up as more and more businesses decide to consolidate all of their online agreement solutions to one platform. And that's, in my opinion, becoming increasingly DocuSign. Lots of noise in the chat about doing a video on Palantir. We'll get there. So the agreement process is manual and disconnected. Anyone who's ever bought a house or even bought a car, right? Like, think about all the stuff that has to happen and all the paperwork and all the different steps that go into buying an asset, right? You have to prepare all the documents, which means they have to be created somewhere. They have to be reviewed. They usually got printed, at some point, like when you physically sign at a dealership. Then you have to sign it. Maybe you mail it or scan it. You have to fax it if you remember what faxes even are, or sometimes you email it. And then those have to get updated in some database. Billing has to start. It has to trigger other processes, right? Okay, you've signed your mortgage. Now all the steps that follow that have to go on. And then those records have to be stored, searchable, analyzable, and auditable. Very important for businesses to maintain a trace of records in an auditable manner, right? In a way that 2 years from now, if an audit happens, they can go and pull that right record and everything is intact and there's no debate about what happened a long time ago through the documentation, right? Documents are messy. So what DocuSign has done is started with e-signature. Let's move that physical signature to the digital space, something that people have been doing in the physical world for centuries, right? Signing documents. Think about how old the process of signing is. It's up there with things like banking. Think about how old banking is. We're talking about institutions that are thousands of years old as markets, right? So as a result of moving things digital, things are completed 44% faster, right? So think about how fast you can blow through a document in DocuSign as it shows you the highlights of, hey, here's where you need to sign next. Here's where you need to initial. Here's where you need to checkbox. Here's where you need to date, and all those things that used to take a long time to manually sift through on something like a couple 100-page mortgage, for example. It's easier, no brainer. It's more cost effective because most of it is automated. It's risk reducing, both in terms of standardizing the process, generating audit trails, but also physical human risk now, right? You don't have to meet a stranger. You don't have to worry about getting in contact with COVID. There's a lot of nice contactless benefits, just like we see with digital wallets, just like we see with digitally native businesses. The other risks that we can add in here that DocuSign reduces are health concerns and health risks. And of course, it has a net promoter score of 71. 71 isn't the highest, but let me tell you, nobody enjoys signing documents in the first place. So I bet some of this net promoter score not being 100 is just by virtue of the fact that they're not a Netflix, they're not a Square. They're making you sign documents that are like everyone rolls their eyes when it comes to signing big documents, right? And some of that sentiment probably bleeds into DocuSign's net promoter score. And it's important to understand how much of that is signal and how much of that is noise. Excellent. So now they're moving they're not moving out of signatures. They're expanding from signatures to the entire agreement process, preparing documents, acting on documents, so the actions that follow signatures, and of course, managing and analyzing large databases of agreements and documents to understand patterns, trends, and develop insights for your business. So that stands on a very technical tech stack. Remember, the tech stack for documents is just paper. The tech stack for digital signatures is massive. It needs to be secure, auditable, traceable, privatizable, all of these things that come with running an online business where you're definitely handling sensitive data, financial information, personally identifiable information. I'm sure sometimes it's medical and legal information, which is very privileged, which means it needs to be properly secured and stored for long periods of time. So to do that, the DocuSign has the DocuSign Agreement Cloud. There's all of the services that stand up on industry integrations, industry solutions, important and fast APIs like REST, different forms of webhooks, data feeds, software development kits, and of course the platforms that support those. Infrastructure and administration, authentication, security, compliance, all of those things I just mentioned that are necessitated by moving to the digital space. See some good questions in the chat. I'm just letting you know I see them. I will call them out. I'm trying to move all the questions to the end of the live stream this time. I'm trying to get better at this, So they're a market leader with a massive expanding total addressable market. Signature, their core business, plus prepare, act, and manage, which is their growing business. That, of course, sits on top of a massive cloud. So the Agreement Cloud, which powers the agreement process, which powers various business processes, right? From marketing and sales to service to human resources to enterprise resource planning and then to IT and ops, right? And so this is how their services have evolved over time. They launched eSignature. Now they're launching all of these other great services for the rest of the management of the agreement process. They're introducing document generation. They're introducing negotiation. So back and forth mechanisms to append and amend documents as the terms change throughout a negotiation. Sign and sealing. Seal acquisition. I think this is a literal acquisition. I apologize. Live Oak, another acquisition. Notary services, which are really important. Today, I have to go to my physical bank or my physical UPS store to get in contact with a physical human notary that signs and seals something as a notary. And then analysis on all of those documents, right? So because they're data-driven and because they're digitally native, they can go back and analyze large volumes of documents for individual companies or across companies, right? So that's an important distinction as well. So huge total addressable market for the whole agreement process from start to finish, which DocuSign is trying to be a major player in. And of course, that breaks down into their key products, eSignature, which we all know and love, the contract lifecycle management from inception through negotiation to finalization, and then to actioning on top of that document, Insight and Analyzer, and then coming soon, that notary. So we can talk a little bit about all of the great things that happen when you move this seemingly boring process into a digitally native space. You can automate the entire contract lifecycle. And this is where DocuSign gets all of these really big wins, right? And that's what I want to emphasize. That's why the thumbnail is the way it is today, because by doing something digital, taking something very physical and making it a digital process, you can generate a bunch of very big wins. Think about what we're talking about. The fundamental process of signing something, which cuts across every market sector, every total addressable market, every geography, every type of business process, business to business to person to person, bank to person to business, etc. Everybody needs to be signing documents. Everyone does it all the time. So what we're talking about is an agreement generation platform and an agreement management platform. Incredibly important. To do that, once they go digital, you can generate agreements, facilitate negotiations, track red lines and changes, and ensure version control, all digitally, which again is very hard to do for physical paper documents. That's what we're comparing to. Connect and track business processes across contributors, reviewers, approvers, auditors. Think about all of the other steps in the chain of approving a mortgage, lenders, borrowers, the people who are owning your mortgage. How many times has your mortgage been sold, changed hands, been refinanced, etc., etc., etc. So centralizing agreements in a secure and importantly searchable repository. Actually, secure is obviously very important too. But again, think about your physical mortgage, if you have that, if you signed for a house 20 years ago, and go search up something for it. Just go like, oh, what is this clause that I'm looking for? Like, what is my termination clause for this or whatever, right? Good luck without Control F, right? So making documents searchable is incredibly important. Docusign Insight, understand what's in your contracts. Hey, here's a big view of your company's entire list of contracts. You can tag them in different ways and look at subsections and categories of your contracts. Find, filter, analyze existing agreements with purpose-built contract analytics, right? So different types of contracts for different type of businesses, and compare AI extracted clauses and terms across agreements. So this is the power of moving something very physical to something very digital. Now you can power these capabilities by AI. It's no longer humans doing the Control F step. It's now robots doing the Control F step for you and providing you context and insights instead of just getting you to the right part of the document to read yourself. Not just search agreements by keywords, but by concept. That context for that concept is what's important here. And as Docusign keeps adding technical capabilities to this seemingly, again, paper and pencil. I don't even have paper at my desk to show you. I was trying to grab a piece of paper. I do everything digitally, right? That's the important step that's happening here. In 20 years, I don't think there will be physical paper documents except for very important, very special, very private, and very secure transactions, right? I want to be very clear about what I'm saying. Paper eventually is going to go away. It's going to be a niche product and a niche process. And Docusign is a big front runner in making that movement happen. Paper money, paper documents, paper contracts. I think that is slowly going to get phased out, just like, what else is getting phased out? Faxing. Faxing used to be the big thing. We don't fax anymore, right? I don't think we will be doing physical signatures 2 or 3 decades from now, definitely in my lifetime. So, and part of that is because you can't Control F a physical document, right? You have to digitize it. And that allows you to analyze it, automated clause and term analysis, risk scoring, direct access to your library of pre-approved clauses. So being able to quickly copy and paste different chunks of different pre-written contracts so that you can quickly generate new ones on the fly. Hey, I need this clause in here. I need this termination clause. I need this redlining and negotiation clause, what have you, right? Integrate Docusign contract lifecycle management to automatically route work based on clause type and risks. So getting the right pieces of a contract to the right people to execute, right? And then, of course, introducing the notary, which right now is still a very physical. Notary signs and physically stamps a piece of paper that you need to have officiated, right? Whether that's a will and testament or a change to a mortgage or an update to a big other type of contract, etc., right? And importantly, that full audit trail. Businesses must comply with having a full audit trail. It doesn't sound super, we're still not talking about Tesla or Square or all of these really visually stimulating brands, but realize how important this is. Businesses really run like this, right? This is one of those things that's under the hood that we just take for granted. Supplying a full automated audit trail is incredibly important to running a multi-billion, a trillion-dollar market cap business as it is for a sole proprietorship or an individual business. You must maintain this full audit trail. The world's leading brands trust DocuSign. Absolute no-brainer, right? Think about all of the capabilities I just said and all of the seemingly boring business back-end processes that require this type of platform. Netflix, Microsoft, Visa, Expedia, Samsung, Citgo, Stripe, LinkedIn, Redfin, Comcast, right? Like these are some of the biggest brand names. Apple, Verizon, right? Like some of the biggest brand names in existence are trusting DocuSign. And that is what makes me incredibly bullish on it. I use DocuSign and Apple uses DocuSign, right? Like those are two very opposite ends of the spectrum, both using the same platform to fill a real need, right? Why DocuSign continues to win? It's comprehensive. We just basically attacked their entire value chain from start to finish, from document generation to document execution. So comprehensive, right? It's got hundreds of integrations and an award-winning API, which is very important as things continue to go digital and people want to build on top of, I want to say this in an emphatic way, the DocuSign platform, right? The signature platform as people continue to build up on that. So they have an award-winning API to allow people to do that. They track records of firsts. So when this first entered the contract, sorry, that's not what they're talking about here. I'm getting ahead of myself. I read this before the presentation, obviously. They have a strong track record of firsts. They're a first in e-signatures. They're the pioneer of e-signatures with 750 product innovations delivered. So they are the market leader in that space. They are often first to offering a new capability in the contract lifecycle management space, right? They have scaled solutions, so this works as well for me as it does for Apple, right? Which I bet has thousands of people working through paperwork all of the time. And they have world-class platform technologies. Obvious. They need an important tech stack to keep things. They need a big tech stack to keep important documents secure, reliably searchable, auditable, privatized, right? And transferable, right? At the same time. Hey, you need to DocuSign this. It goes right to your email. You hit a button. You might have a second like authenticator credential to verify that it's you. And then you're already chugging along and signing. Think about how frictionless DocuSign is while how secure it is. And compare that to something like Bitcoin, right? The thing I'm trying to compare here is Bitcoin's blockchain sacrifices convenience for security, right? One of the reasons Bitcoin is so slow, even though I think it's incredibly fast for what it does, is because it's the most secure blockchain. So there's often a trade between security and speed in the digital era. The more secure you are, the slower the transaction tends to be throughout the verification, auditing process, right? Think about how fast DocuSign is while maintaining that capability of being so secure. That's what's going on here. And of course, that security leads them to be trusted. You can tell I've practiced this. So almost 1 million customers and hundreds of millions of signers. No brainer, right? They're secure and private. They follow all sorts of these compliances, right? FedRAMP, GDPR, which is an important one. I deal with that a lot in e-commerce. BCR, and then different ISO standards. And their net promoter score of 71, again, I want to emphasize that 71 is not a bad score. And the reason I'm saying it that way is because we often see net promoter scores in the high 90s and all that kind of stuff. But again, when you're signing for a mortgage is a stressful and inherently not fun process, right? So some of that low net promoter score comes from the market that DocuSign is actually in, the boring process. Again, if you're just listening to me, I'm making huge air quotes every time I say boring. The boring process, huge air quotes, of signing mortgages, of signing for cars, of signing important legal documents. That's not the stuff that people enjoy doing in the first place. And some of that sentiment always bleeds into the platform you're doing it on. So I always want to call that out because I love DocuSign, even though I don't like signing documents, right? That's the important thing. And they, of course, their strategy for addressing and aggressively pursuing all of that entire stack, that contract life cycle management process, has done very well for them. Again, the proof is in the pudding. We use DocuSign as a verb. I'm going to go DocuSign my mortgage, right? They have a strong sales channel, huge target market from very small businesses with under 10 employees all the way to enterprise companies, right? Apple's on the list. Apple is a $1 trillion company. I'm a very small business. I'm a $0.00 billion company, right? And we both use DocuSign, and that's what's important. They cover the whole spectrum very successfully. And they have a powerful land and expand model, starting with that simple and elegant e-signature and expanding into that entire contract management lifecycle. And robust partner ecosystem across all of the different parts that make this magic happen, right? Software, system integration, and resellers, right? Huge partner network. Google, Microsoft, Salesforce, SAP. SAP is Oracle, right? System integrators and resellers all over because they need to manage different important parts of their tech stack, and other companies might need proprietary custom solutions for the way they do their business. So I think everything else is financials. We can briefly gloss over them. The financials are going to be great, of course, because they took something very physical and made it very digital, and they are a signature and agreement platform, right? And as we see time and time again with ARK's picks, these companies are in increasing total addressable markets, and their stake in those markets, or their size in those markets, I should say, is increasing on top of that. And when you get growth on top of growth, that's how you see those exponential growth curves, right? So wide range of customers from single users, from very small businesses to enterprises, product additions from single users to entire platforms. I'm using the word platform a billion times on purpose because that's the kind of thing that ARK Invest tries to invest in: technology platforms, innovation platforms, right? And of course, here's the revenue. Big upward trajectory, right, from FY18 to FY19, 20, and 21. Some of this, of course, is due to the pandemic, but all the pandemic did, and I want to make this important point, all the pandemic did was increase the rate of growth. If you were not already a growing business, you didn't grow in the pandemic. All it did was take all of the digital growth, e-commerce, online entertainment, streaming, online document signatures, online banking, online X, insert, fill in the blank here, and accelerate that growth. So this growth, realize that even though you're seeing really strong numbers here, this growth was in front of DocuSign. It just happened faster, right? They hit that exponential growth earlier because the world needed to move contactless. But the world was moving this way anyway, is what I'm trying to say. Subscription revenue, massive increases year over year, 37%, 38%, 50%. And again, DocuSign's a huge company. 50% growth is a massive deal, right? And then revenue contribution comes 95% from their subscriptions and only 5% from professional services and other today. That tells me two things. One, their subscription business is enough to be very profitable on its own. And two, they have a lot of runway ahead of them to grow their professional services and the other things in their value chain. So this is a double win for me. They're already set for growth with the things they offer today, and their new services have a lot of room to grow based on the way they know how to grow with what they offer today. Huge win. And strong growth in billings and all that. We can talk about this all day till we're blue in the face, but I think we all understand that digitally native businesses that are taking something inherently tough and physical, like keeping records on paper in an auditable and compliant manner, are going to win if they can do something like commoditize that capability, right? Make it accessible to everyone, which is exactly what DocuSign has done. So I've spent 30 minutes talking about DocuSign now. Let me quickly go through the questions and then we will wrap up. In a nutshell, I think DocuSign is a huge outsized winner. I use DocuSign as a verb. I use DocuSign as a service. I am just one company. I'm just one person. I'm a one-person company, right? I'm the guy from ticker symbol U. Apple also uses DocuSign. Netflix also uses DocuSign. So they have addressed every level of that spectrum. And now they're expanding horizontally, right? They're expanding what is that addressable spectrum. Initially, it was e-signatures. Now it's the full contract management lifecycle. Excellent. Again, their stock trading pretty much sideways since the end of July, down 0.31% from their mid-summer peak. So sideways because people don't know what to think about this stock. Is it a pandemic play? Is it going to survive while the economy recovers? Are people going to move back to signing physical documents? I'm not confused at all. I think Docusign is going to be, and companies like Docusign are going to be outsized winners because that growth has accelerated. They're not going to ungrow. People aren't going to go back to, I'm done Docusigning, I want the physical paper, right? Like, that's a no-brainer. People aren't going to unsubscribe from Netflix. People aren't going to stop using their digital wallets. Now that they've had a taste for online commerce, online banking, online agreements, there's no way that a reasonable person would go back and say, I want the physical version of this, except as an experience, right? That shopping experience, walking into the bank for a specific solution that banker or that teller needs to do for you, signing a document that can only be signed physically, right? Like I'm buying a special car, buying a special piece of art, I'm buying this special asset that requires a physical signature. It's special, right? The 90% case is going to move digital forever. Great. Let's address some of the comments. I'm flying by the seat of my pants here. Thank you for your time in creating excellent content and discussing these companies. I believe Docusign is far ahead of any competition and has an extraordinary moat built around itself. I agree. I think we spent a lot of time talking about that moat, maybe implicitly, but the important and big tech stack that they've built around this agreement process, the securing of these documents, the auditability and searchability of these documents, the frictionless way they can get transferred and signed, all of that necessitates a very large technical prowess, which Docusign absolutely possesses, right? The thing that I really like about this comment is Docusign is not a hype stock today. I honestly have no idea why, because it's core to every business, but it's one of those stocks that's really important to talk about, and nobody seems to be talking about it. It's trading sideways. It's got good news after good news. It's a giant company. It's doing something very digital. It's taken something very boring, huge air quotes again, and turned it into something very easy to do. Think about how scary signing documents used to be as a young person. Signing your first mortgage, signing your car loan, signing off your student loans, all that stuff. And think about how not scary Docusign makes that. I can't emphasize enough how frictionless Docusign has made the document signing process. I'll throw this up here again. Let me know what you think about Docusign. Do you think all agreements could be completed by Docusign if Docusign were to support them? Do you think there's some agreements that can never be supported digitally? Has anyone here not used Docusign? What competitors do you use? I know my company for a little bit used something called PandaDoc as their document management solution. Oh boy, would I rather be using Docusign, right? This is the same argument of Teams versus Slack, right? Like, there's people have a strong preference for one or the other, right? When it comes to Docusign, it's going to be the same thing. Docusign versus its near peer, people have strong things to say. Another example is Dropbox versus Box. We can think of all of these direct competitors where it's like it's a very polarizing conversation, right? So let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about Docusign specifically, e-signatures in general, physical paper in general. Really good competitor. Adobe is very good at paperwork, as well as all of the, Adobe owns PDF, right? Like Adobe Reader and all that stuff. Adobe Sign, I think, is a legit competitor. Totally great call out, Kyle. I think that's totally fair. Adobe could be a significant competitor, not to mention the FANGs, but Docusign is a solid enterprise. Absolutely agree with this statement. But think about the type of companies you're comparing these to, and think about the difference in hype between those companies and Docusign. I think Docusign is fundamentally mispriced right now based on the magnitude of the solution it provides and how little people are talking about it, and how important it is of a solution that it provides. Not just the magnitude in terms of how many signatures, but think about the importance of signing documents to business. This is one of those stocks that to me is an absolute no-brainer. So It's ARK Invest's 17th biggest position, so I'm glad to see that to them it's a no-brainer too, simply because it does such an important service business to business, business to consumer, and consumer to consumer. I'll leave you with that. Digital signing is the future. Digital everything is the future. I strongly believe that when I think about the market 5 years ahead from now, and we'll see how Docusign performs accordingly. This is Ticker Symbol Live. My name is Alex, reminding you that the best investment you can make is in you. Thanks for watching.